The Olympics are a showcase of the greatest talent in the world, so you'd think they'd be competing in world class facilities. But that's not going to be the case for the Olympic hockey tournament. Insider Chris Johnston just came back from touring the rink in Milan. CJ, watering cans to fix holes in the ice, a scoreboard that looks like it came out of a high school gymnasium. Beyond what the officials are saying publicly, from what you saw, is that barn worthy of hosting the Olympic Games hockey tournament?
Well, it certainly wasn't as of this weekend. I can tell you that what I walked into at Santa Julia Arena was pretty shocking, frankly. Just both the level of disrepair and chaos, with it very much being an active construction site, but also you do think of this as the marquee international event in hockey. It's been 12 years since NHL players have been to the Olympic Games, and you just imagine it happening on a stage a little grander than the one that exists right now in Milan. Now there is still time to work, and the expectation is that it's going to be a pretty crazy 3 to 4 weeks in terms of the amount of construction and workers there around the clock, getting it up to a higher standard. But there's definitely an undercurrent here from the NHL and the NHL Players Association that things should be better, could be better. But at this point in time, I certainly feel confident and comfortable that they're going to go ahead with the Olympic Games, but it may not be exactly what we associate with the sort of prestige of that event.
It's one thing to call it playable, it's another thing to call it world class. Team Canada's huge edge is supposed to be speed and skill. But if the ice is soft and slushy, could that take away the ability for guys like McKinnon and McDavid to dominate there the way they've been dominating on real height ice that we have here in North America?
Well, Canada has built a team, I think, that they feel comfortable that they can win any way that's necessary. Obviously, you have some of the best offensive players in the world, McKinnon, McDavid, Celebrini on this team, but they've also brought a different element with Tom Wilson and Brad Marchand. I do think that they are comfortable sort of adapting to the circumstances that end up existing there. If there's one positive that came out of the test event over the weekend, I think it is the ice. It sounds a little ironic, of course, because there was the hole that developed in the first period of the first game there Friday night. But they did play 6 subsequent games on that surface, and it did seem to get better. It was a little snowy at times, and what I was told is that they will make some adjustments to basically the temperature in the building to account for that. But I think that there does seem to be hope that over the next few weeks that they're able to get this surface up to something a little bit more NHL quality. And we did focus obviously quite a bit here in recent months about the fact that the rink dimensions are not exactly NHL specs. I can say from being in the building, it wasn't all that noticeable. I mean, we'll see what the top players in the world feel once they get on there and play games. But I don't think that that's going to have a huge bearing over the style of play and which team ultimately ends up with the gold medal.
Meanwhile, CJ, more injury concerns from Team Canada. Brayden Point twisted his knee right after he scored a goal last night. After the game, Tampa and Team Canada head coach John Cooper looked pretty somber. Looks like he's worried. What's the latest on Point and where Team Canada could go from here?
Yeah, and John Cooper also referred to it as the elephant in the room because of the big tournament on the horizon. So, you're right. At this point, I think his body language and what we saw with Brayden Point, leaving the ice, unable to put any weight on his right leg as he was doing so, is a huge cause for concern. We don't have a ton of clarity in terms of the extent of that injury at this stage. One complication is that the Lightning are on the road right now. They're playing back-to-backs. Point traveled with the team to Pittsburgh, where they play on Tuesday, but they don't have the same access, obviously, to the medical facilities that this happened at home. And so they're going to get Point examined here and make a determination on what his timeline is. But it has huge bearing because we're still not too far off the Olympic Games. We know players will do absolutely anything they can to be ready for Team Canada, but we just have to see exactly what Point is dealing with after that scary injury last night.
Before I let you go, we should talk about the timing of this because a lot of fans are wondering at what point do the Canadians and the other countries have to submit their rosters so that they're not suffering because of injuries. What is the timeline on that?
Well, the NHL charters fly to Milan leaving February 7th. And so at that point in time, your roster is your roster. Teams are allowed to bring 25 players. So obviously everyone will have injury replacements or other players on hand in Milan. But beyond that, you can't make changes. So, there's still a few weeks to work with, whether it's Point or Tom Wilson or any of the other Canadian players that are currently dealing with injuries before decisions have to be made. But on the flip side of that equation as well, if you're asking someone else to come, you're going to want to give them adequate heads up to prepare themselves to go to the Olympic Games. So I think it is a little bit of a balancing act. Team Canada has kept a number of forwards on the Olympic testing list, so those players know they're effectively on standby. That list includes a Sam Bennett, Connor Bedard, Wyatt Johnston, Mark Scheifele, and others, Morgan Geekie as well. So they do have other options, and I think this is where the benefit of Canada's depth comes in. Is unfortunately you have to leave some of those players off initially, but you do have them to call on if needed here in the next few weeks. So that's kind of the timeline we're looking at here. And one thing to note too, Gino, is management's looking, if a player goes down, to sort of replace his skill set with someone that's a bit similar. So Point's an offensive player when he's at his best. He scored 50 goals in the league before. Is a candidate to be on the wing, potentially in the top 6 for Team Canada. So if he's unable to go here because of this injury, you're probably looking at players that can fill that kind of role in terms of who the replacement would be.
Canada opens the Olympic hockey tournament 4 weeks from tomorrow. That's it for Early IT. The full version of Insider Trading with CJ, Pierre, and Dregs is coming up on the early edition of SportsCenter.